Week 9 is upon us, and once this week is complete, we will officially be at the halfway point in the regular season. And we are in for an exciting and thrilling week, as there are must-watch matchups all over the schedule this week. Miami and Kansas City in Germany on Sunday morning, Seattle and Baltimore, Dallas and Philadelphia, Buffalo and Cincinnati on Sunday night. Also, one game that I think a lot of people have forgotten about. It may not be an exciting matchup, but it has a very good storyline. Indianapolis and Carolina, the Frank Reich revenge game. The Panthers got their first win of the season last week, and now they take on Indy in the Frank Reich revenge game, as Frank Reich was fired from the Colts last season, but now he coaches the Panthers. This is his opportunity for a final reckoning. Last week I went 12-4 in my picks, which puts me at 83-39 on the year so far. How will I fare in week 9? I hope I do just as good as last week, if not better, but any given Sunday, as what we have seen in the last few weeks, no win is guaranteed for anybody in any week. Without further ado, let's get to the Week 9 NFL predictions. Thursday night football, Titans and Steelers, and I will be honest, the Titans, in my opinion, are the most frustrating team in the NFL. And it's nothing against them or their fan base. Their lack of consistency is frustrating, as I have no idea which Titans team is going to show up on game day. Will it be the Titans team that beat the Bengals in dominant fashion 27-3, or will it be the team that lost to the Colts and Gardner Minshew? Last week, the Titans got the win over the Falcons. Will Levis, he looked phenomenal. 4 touchdown passes, 3 of them to DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins finally had his moment in the Titans offense that we were waiting to see. But the injury report for the Titans, it does look a bit concerning. Derrick Henry, Tajay Spears, DeAndre Hopkins, Jeffrey Simmons, they were all limited in practice on Monday. For the Steelers, quarterback Kenny Pickett is questionable with a ribs injury he sustained in the game last week against the Jaguars. And if Kenny Pickett does not go in this game, they will turn to Mitch Trubisky, a quarterback throughout his career that has had his moments. He's had some positive moments, but he has had a lot of negative moments. But this game does feel like a toss-up to me, but I am going to go with the Steelers in this matchup. I just feel like with Will Levis in his first road game in a hostile environment, the terrible tells, and the Steelers defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL when they're fully healthy. And I think the Steelers defense will have their way in this game with Will Levis. I think they make Will Levis feel uncomfortable. I think he's going to get pressured a lot in this matchup. And I think the Steelers defense will be the difference maker in this game, in a game that I'm anticipating is going to be low scoring. And Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears, they were both limited in practice on Monday, but I anticipate they're both going to play. So I'm anticipating how many carries each of them will get in this matchup, knowing that they're injured. But either way, I am picking the Steelers. Dolphins, Chiefs in Germany Sunday morning, and I cannot wait for this one. I hope we get a high-scoring game in this one. We have the potential for it, but will we get it? Tyreek Hill goes up against his former team, and there is no doubt in my mind that a lot of people wished that this game was in Arrowhead. The current narrative for the Dolphins right now, they can't beat the strong teams in the NFL. Their 2 losses on the year are the 2 strongest teams they've played so far this season, the Bills and Eagles. And they'll go against a strong Chiefs team, despite what happened last week on the road against the Broncos. The Broncos defense kept the Broncos in the game from start to finish, which they have done the last couple of times the Chiefs and Broncos played each other. And that was the main strategy for the Broncos, was to have the defense keep them in the game from start to finish. And they had a chance to beat the Chiefs the first time, but their offense just couldn't get anything going until it was too little too late. But this time around, Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense made enough plays to win the game for the Broncos, ending the long, extensive losing streak to the Chiefs. So how do the Chiefs bounce back? And I would be really surprised if the Chiefs were held to 9 points again this week. And that's just what's going to happen sometimes in the NFL, any given Sunday. You can have a bunch of points a couple weeks, and then 1 week you get held to less than 10. It just happens sometimes. I do think that the Chiefs are excellent at bouncing back, and I do think they bounce back in this game. And the offense will be the showcase for this game, but the defenses. Jalen Ramsey made his debut for the Dolphins last week, and he got an interception. The Chiefs defense, they have been underrated this season. They've been under the radar. And in the beginning, there was talks about the Chiefs defense being young and inexperienced. But they are flying under the radar as one of the better defenses in the NFL. And nobody's really talking about it. But I do think the Chiefs, they win this game. I think that current narrative for the Dolphins about how they can't beat the strong teams in the NFL, I do think that is going to continue. And I'm going to pick the Chiefs. And by the way, the Chiefs, they are 4th in total defense. Vikings and Falcons. Unfortunately, Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles last week against the Packers, and he is out for the remainder of the season. And that is something you never want to see. Kirk Cousins is a very nice man. And there are a lot of people that talk about how Kirk Cousins is one of the most wholesome players in the NFL. And this is the worst time for something like this to happen to him, to have a setback like this, when it was a contract year for him. And he was starting to get his confidence after carving up the 49ers defense on Monday Night Football the week prior. And now the Vikings are turning to Jaron Hill, the rookie out of BYU, to go on the road against the Falcons. A Falcons team that Arthur Smith does not know how to use the talent that he has. Although Desmond Ridder did sustain a concussion, he was checked for a concussion, but he cleared the concussion protocol. But Taylor Heineke played the entire second half, and I'm hoping that at least Arthur Smith realizes that Taylor Heineke is the better of the 2 quarterbacks right now. Now, there are rumors that the Vikings, they could be trading for a quarterback at the trade deadline. And I am recording this on Monday night before the trade deadline because it's not going to make sense later on. So I just wanted to point that out. But if they do trade for a quarterback, I anticipate that Jaron Hall at least starts in this game, which is why I'm going to pick the Falcons to win this one. Bijan Robinson at least has some confidence as he got his first rushing touchdown of the year last week against the Titans. The Falcons defense, they played their worst game defensively of the year, allowing 4 touchdown passes to Will Levis. I will be honest, and sometimes the truth, it's really tough to take in, but I think if the Falcons lose this game to the Vikings, with Jaron Hall likely being the quarterback, if they lose to rookie quarterbacks in back-to-back weeks, I think something has to be done with the coaching staff. I think they need to move on from Arthur Smith if they lose this game, as they took the lead in the NFC South a couple of weeks ago. They are fortunate enough to retain the lead in the NFC South in a division that is going to be decided on the final week, most likely. I think the Falcons are going to win, but if they lose this game, they really need to think about moving on from Arthur Smith. Cardinals and Browns. The Cardinals had another valiant effort last week against the Ravens. They at least covered. The Browns are coming off of a heartbreaking loss to the Seahawks last week, allowing the game-winning touchdown to Jackson Smith and Jigba in the final seconds. And big news out of the Cardinals camp, Clayton Tune is slated to be the starter in this matchup. Joshua Dobbs no longer the starting quarterback for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray isn't ready quite yet, so Clayton Tune is slated to get the start this week. And I am recording this part on Monday night. But with the Cardinals going ahead starting Clayton Tune instead of Joshua Dobbs, I think, has done a very solid job for the Cardinals. But there are potential rumors out there that maybe Joshua Dobbs is on the move at the trade deadline. Maybe the Vikings are looking for a quarterback with Kirk Cousins being out for the season. That could be something to keep an eye out on. But either way, I'm going to pick the Browns in this matchup. I just simply think the Browns are going to run the ball better in this matchup. I just overall think that the Browns defense is legitimate. We've seen what the Browns defense has done the entire season so far. They are still leading the NFL in total defense. And I think this will be a game the Browns will have their way in this game defensively with Clayton Tune under center for the Cardinals. And perhaps we'll see another valiant effort from the Cardinals, despite everybody saying they're going to be tanking. They're looking forward to the future. I think the Browns, they take this one. Rams and Packers, a battle between two teams that really need to get a win to get momentum and confidence going into the second half of the season. And I really thought both of these teams could make an under-the-radar run to the playoffs. Now, there is still time for them to do so, but it has been a struggle as of late for both of these teams. They have been struggling to get points on the scoreboard. Jordan Love had a strong start to the year, but lately he has been struggling. And it's disappointing to see because I was really rooting for Jordan Love. I wanted to see him prove the doubters wrong, and there is still time for him to do so. But as of lately, it has been a struggle for him. Matthew Stafford is considered day-to-day for the Rams, and I am leaning towards him playing in this game. Matthew Stafford is a very tough athlete. He is one of those athletes that's built different and doesn't want to miss time when he doesn't have to. I do think as long as the Rams still have a chance to make a run for the playoffs, Matthew Stafford, I think, wants to play. And I have no idea who to pick in this game. I'm going towards who I think the better quarterback is going to be in this matchup. And as much as I am rooting for Jordan Love to have a strong second half of the year, if Matthew Stafford plays, I am all in on the Rams. I do think even if Matthew Stafford doesn't play in this game, I still think the Rams, they win this one for the sole reason that the Packers, they have been struggling as of late. And I think those struggles may continue, as I'm anticipating, if we don't see Matthew Stafford under center for the Rams in this matchup, I think it'll be a low scoring game with the Rams still winning at the end of the day. Commanders and Patriots, and I am back to recording on Tuesday. The games I covered prior to this one were recorded on Monday night. Now we have the trade deadline context. The Commanders traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young. They traded Sweat to the Bears and Young to the 49ers. The Commanders surrendered two of their biggest pieces on their defense. And there were rumors that they were going to be sellers at the trade deadline, depending on how the Eagles game went the week prior. And they lost against the Eagles, and they decided to sell Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And now they go on the road to take on a Patriots team that, I will be honest, even though their record is what it is, they have been competitive in quite a bit of their matchups. And both of these teams played high-octane offenses the week before. The Commanders playing the Eagles and the Patriots the Dolphins. And I am going to go with what I think is the better defense in this matchup, and that is the Patriots. I actually would not be surprised if this game went back and forth, as I could see that happening, with the Commanders giving up two of their big pieces on defense. I do think that opens up running lanes for Ramondre Stevenson. I think Ramondre Stevenson is in for a massive breakout game, and I'm going to pick the Patriots in a game of I don't know who to pick. I have to pick somebody to win this game, and this feels like a coin flip, but I am going to go with the Patriots to get it done. Bears and Saints. The Bears will be once again having Tyson Bagent under center for this matchup, and they go on the road to take on a Saints team that is feeling confident after their win against the Colts last week. Alvin Kamara had a day again, as he has been involved heavily in the Saints offense since he has gotten back from his suspension. And I think he is in for another big game as well, as the Bears, they gave up quite a bit to Austin Eckler last week, and I expect Alvin Kamara to have a similar performance than Austin Eckler did last week. Maybe even better, as Austin Eckler, he was getting back to form from an injury. Alvin Kamara has had the hot hand for the Saints in their offense. I think the Saints are going to play their best game of the season this week against the Bears. Chris Olave has gotten a significant amount of targets in the offense. I think this is the week that Chris Olave, we finally start to see him break out the way that he was anticipated to going into the season, as the last couple of weeks has been a struggle for him. He hasn't been making the catches, but he's been targeted. But I think he's in for a big day. I think the Saints win very convincingly. And we will have to see how the Bears move forward after this game. Is Justin Fields going to be ready for next week against the Panthers on Thursday Night Football? Seahawks and Ravens in one of the best games of the week. And this one feels complicated because the Ravens are off to a strong start this season. But I think a lot of people are forgetting that the Ravens, they have lost to the Colts and the Steelers, which isn't really that big of a deal considering any given Sunday and all 32 teams in the NFL are professional teams for a reason. I was wanting to lean towards the Seahawks. The defense of the Seahawks, though, I think is a bit concerning, at least as far as consistency. And I have voiced this a couple of times this season and last year, where their defense just feels like night and day. One week they look like a top 5 defense in the league, and then the next week they look like a bottom 7 defense in the league. I do feel like this game is going to be fairly similar to the Lions and Ravens a couple of weeks ago, but I think the Seahawks will put up more points than the Lions did. In fact, I think they'll put up a lot more points than the Lions, but I still think the Ravens are going to win this game. I think despite the two Ravens losses to the Colts and Steelers, I think that they are a serious contender to represent the AFC in Las Vegas if they can stay healthy. Injuries have been it's been a downfall for the Ravens in recent years. And I think if they all stay healthy, I think the Ravens have a strong chance of winning the AFC. And I think this will be a game where they prove that they are to be taken serious in this AFC race. Because most of the time, throughout the last year or so, the Ravens aren't talked about as much because the injuries have been their downfall. But I think as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, Mark Andrews stays healthy, I think they got a chance. And I do think they're going to prove themselves to be up there with the best in the AFC, and some may even consider them the best after this week, if they beat the Seahawks convincingly. Buccaneers and Texans, and for those of you that have been tuning in throughout the season so far, there is about a 95% chance you know where I'm going with this matchup. The Buccaneers recently played on Thursday night, so they have the rest factor to their advantage, and they get a Texans team that is coming off of a heartbreaking defeat to the Panthers. And this is twice this season. The Texans have lost games off of game-winning field goals at the end of the game. The Falcons and the Panthers. So the Texans, they're playing a lot better football than what their record shows, and how a lot of us, including myself, predicted going into the season. As I have been open about how underrated I feel like the Texans are going to be, but I thought maybe they were about 2 or 3 years away from becoming playoff contenders. And if those two games go in their direction, maybe we are talking about the Texans being playoff contenders. But I'm going to go with the rested Tampa Bay in this matchup. They have the Texans right now as, I believe, a 3-point favorite, but I do think that is understandable, as the home team usually gets 3 points anyway. But I'm going to pick the well-rested team in Tampa Bay, and I think they will get it done. And the Texans, they will not be able to recover from the heartbreaker to the Panthers last week. The Panthers getting their first win, and they take on a Tampa Bay team that was close to taking down the Bills last Thursday night if Chris Godwin would have just seen the ball. We're probably talking about a Buccaneers team that has massive confidence going into this game. Colts and Panthers, the Frank Reich revenge game. And believe it or not, I have not seen one person on any social media platform acknowledge that this is the Frank Reich revenge game. Frank Reich was the head coach for the Colts last season, and he was relieved of his duties in the middle of the season. But in the offseason, he took the head coaching job for the Panthers. And the Panthers are coming off of their first win of the season last week against the Texans, which I had called, by the way. And now they take on a Colts team that they were in an offensive battle against the Saints last week, but the Colts bid for a win. It fell short. And I am going to pick the Colts to bounce back. I just think with the Panthers coming off of their first win of the year, an emotional win, the way that they won, I really want to see the Panthers win. I want to see Frank Reich get his final reckoning on the Colts, especially with how the Colts ownership has been. Jim Irsay has been stingy and sleazy, and I just think it would be funny if the Colts lost to the Panthers with Frank Reich wearing the headset. But I just don't see that happening. I'm rooting for it to happen, but I just can't see it. Giants and Raiders. Good news for Giants fans, or maybe bad news depending on how the fans feel. Daniel Jones is expected to practice on Wednesday, as he has missed the last few games with a neck injury. And they take on a Raiders team that needs to find their identity. I believe there was a stat that was given out on the telecast on Monday Night Football last week that the Raiders are the only team in the NFL that have not scored more than 21 points in any of their last 4 games. That has got to say something. A lot of Raiders fans want Mark Davis to smarten up and part ways with Josh McDaniels. And we have seen a Josh McDaniels coaching tenure with the Broncos, and that was disastrous. Davante Adams was seen frustrated on the sidelines, and I don't blame him. Davante Adams is easily a top 5 receiver in the league, arguably top 3. And he is not getting the ball. As he had opportunities to make big plays in that game on Monday night, but Jimmy Garoppolo just wasn't throwing the football in the right place. And Davante Adams, he requested a trade, but the Raiders did not trade him, and I felt like they should have. And I think a big reason for that is the Raiders, they just seem to have an emotional investment in Davante Adams, considering what they gave up to get him in the first place. The bright spot for the Raiders is they got Josh Jacobs going in the first half of that Monday night game against the Lions, as we saw Josh Jacobs find the end zone. Whether the quarterback for the Giants is going to be Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor, as Tyrod Taylor, he did sustain a ribs injury in the game against the Jets. He exited the game early, and Tommy DeVito, he finished that game. And that was a game where it felt like nobody wanted to win it. It was a low-scoring game, but the Giants' defense, they have been impressive these last couple of weeks. And I think that momentum continues. I had the Giants winning this one. Cowboys and Eagles, a classic NFC East rivalry. And there's going to be a lot of beef throughout the week leading up into this game, on the internet and in person, as these are two of the most passionate fan bases in the NFL. In the 2 matchups between these two last season, the quarterback matchups were different both times. In game 1, it was Cooper Rush against Jalen Hurts. In a game where we saw the Eagles get off to a quick start, the Cowboys, they did get their way back into the game, but the Eagles shut the door on them late. In game 2, it was Gardner Minshew against Dak Prescott in a game that was high scoring, but the Cowboys, they came away with the victory in that game. Now we have Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. Both of the starting quarterbacks are healthy and good to go for this game. And I talked about last week, going into the Rams game for the Cowboys, that the bye week could not have come at a better time for them. As going into the bye week, they had a confidence booster of a win against the Chargers on Monday night, in a game that was a 60-minute game from start to finish, a game they had to grind it out. The defense stepped up at the end of the game to seal the win up for the Cowboys against the Chargers. The Eagles will be going into their bye week after this game, and what a confidence booster it would be to get a win against a division rival going into your bye week, setting things up for the Super Bowl rematch. And I think we're going to be in for a high-scoring game, believe it or not. Despite these two defenses being very strong, I think we are in for a lot of points in this game. I will be surprised if this game is low-scoring. But I'm going to pick the Eagles in this one. Even though I do like the confidence that the Cowboys are on, the Eagles, they faced a challenge against the Commanders last week, a team that in the past has given them fits, but they overcame it, and I think they're going to get it done against the Cowboys in this one, in a game that I think is going to be high scoring. I think it just comes down to which QB makes the plays down the stretch, and I like that to be Jalen Hurts. Bills and Bengals, Sunday Night Football. The last time these two teams went against each other in Cincinnati, we know what happened that night. I'm not going to get into it. Let's just focus on this game on Sunday night. The Bills are coming off of a Thursday night victory against the Buccaneers. And I have used the Thursday night theory a lot. The Bengals are coming off of a road win against the 49ers. I have talked about for weeks when the Bengals got out to a slow start. The later on we get into the season, the better the Bengals will be. The Bengals played their best game of the season last week against the 49ers. And even though I tend to favor the teams that played on Thursday the week prior, the Bills, they still don't look like that dominant team that we have seen in the last couple of seasons and that we were expecting to see coming into the year. As this was a game that the Buccaneers, they really had a chance to pull off the upset. But the Bills, they survived and advanced. But the problem is the Bills have done that quite a bit throughout the year. And I'm going to pick the Bengals with them coming off of their best game of the season, dominating against the 49ers. Joe Mixon had a really strong day. Joe Burrow played his best game of the year against the 49ers defense, one of the strongest defenses in the NFL. The Bills did trade for Rasul Douglas, but I don't think he's going to be helpful this week. I'm going to pick the team that I think is more confident right now, and that is the Bengals. Chargers and Jets to wrap up Week 9. Monday Night Football. The Chargers are coming off a dominant win against the Bears on Sunday night. The Jets are coming off a 13-10 overtime victory against the Giants in a game that was very defensive. A defensive battle the entire way through. And that statement sticks out to me for what I'm about to say. The Jets are 4-3, but they are not your standard 4-3 team. Every game except for week 2 against the Cowboys, they have been competitive from start to finish. However, in that game against the Cowboys, Sauce Gardner had a chance at a pick 6 that could have changed the tide and momentum in that game. Other than that, the Jets have been competitive in every game this season. And there's a statement Robert Saleh made after beating the Eagles, giving them their first loss of the year. He said that we have taken on some of the best quarterbacks in the league, and we've embarrassed them. Week 1, Josh Allen, 3 interceptions. Week 4, Patrick Mahomes. It was not a dominant win for the Chiefs like a lot of people were anticipating. And that was a game that ended in controversy. I would argue that if it wasn't for the controversy, I think the Jets maybe would have been able to pull that one out. Then against the Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he had a bad day that day. He had 3 interceptions on the day. And now they take on Justin Herbert, another strong quarterback in the NFL. And I am not a betting person, but I do like to help people. And here's what I'm thinking might happen throughout the week. I think that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be convinced to put their money on the Chargers, knowing with what we saw last week. I think people are forgetting how good the Jets defense is. I'm convinced that I think maybe at least 70 to 80% of the public money might be on the Chargers. And then I think everyone's going to get blindsided. At least the majority of the people are going to get blindsided, and the Jets pull off the upset. I'm calling for the upset here on Monday night. I think the Jets get the upset over the Chargers. Their defense has been phenomenal all season long, and I think that continues. And that will do it for my Week 9 NFL predictions. Comment your picks down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Enjoy the football this weekend. And we are in November, so the season is going by fast.